Today, we're diving into something that is no exaggeration, absolutely critical for a child's success. We're talking about the power of reading. But we're not just going to talk about why it's a good idea. We're going to get into the science of what's actually happening inside a child's brain when they learn to read and how that process can literally build their future. So, let me start with a question for you. What if I told you that just 20 minutes a day could completely change a child's life? I know, it sounds like a pretty bold claim, but stick with me because the evidence we're about to look at is, well, it's truly amazing. First things first, we need to kind of reframe how we think about reading. It's not just another skill like learning to ride a bike or something. It's a genuine fundamental advantage that supports just about every other part of a child's development. And look, this isn't just some feel-good theory. It is backed by solid research. The connection is incredibly direct. The more time a kid spends reading for fun, outside of school assignments, the higher their scores are on achievement tests. It's a straight line, really. More time with books equals better results. Simple as that.
But why? Why does that happen? Well, to figure that out, we've got to peek inside the brain and see the incredible changes that take place when a child becomes a reader. And honestly, this is where things get really fascinating.
All right, first, we need to get a key term down: reading fluency. Now, this is way more than just recognizing letters on a page. It's two things working together perfectly. First, the ability to decode, to sound out the words. And second, the ability to actually understand what those words mean. You have to have both, or it just doesn't work. And check this out. You can actually see the brain physically changing. For a brand new reader, their brain is working really hard. It's using separate, distinct areas to process sounds and then to process the letters on the page. But as they practice, a fluent reader's brain builds what you could literally call a neural superhighway. It connects those areas, making the whole process faster and so much more efficient. So how does the brain build that superhighway? It pretty much happens in 3 steps. First, the brain makes the connection between the basic sounds of our language, they're called phonemes, and the letters it sees on the page. Then, with more and more practice, that pathway gets stronger, like a well-worn trail. And finally, the brain gets so good at it that it can pull up words and their meanings almost instantly. It becomes automatic. That's fluency right there. A researcher named Guinevere Eden put it perfectly. She said, within his brain, the child is literally building the neural circuitry that links the sounds of spoken words to the print code. Just pause on that for a second. It is a physical construction project happening inside their head every single time they sit down to read. Now, beyond just rewiring the brain, reading unlocks another superpower, a massive vocabulary explosion. Seriously, we're talking about an avalanche of new words. And when it comes to learning, words are power. A big vocabulary doesn't just happen by magic. It has to be nurtured. It's fed by being exposed to all the rich, varied words you find in books, and also by having great conversations. But this isn't just about winning a spelling bee. It's about building the entire framework for understanding the world. The more words a child knows, the more complex their thoughts can be. It creates this incredible upward spiral of learning. Okay, so we've talked about the brain science. Now let's get into the hard data. We're going to put some numbers to this daily reading habit. And the results, well, they are nothing short of astonishing. So let's circle back to that question from the beginning, but this time let's look at the numbers. How much of a difference, a real, measurable difference, can a few minutes of reading each day actually make? The answer is huge. Take a look at this. This tells the story of 3 different students. You've got student A, who reads for just 1 minute a day. That adds up to about 8,000 words a year, and they land in the 10th percentile on tests. Okay, now student B bumps it up to 5 minutes a day, and that makes a decent difference, over 250,000 words, right in the middle of the pack. But then you get to student C, 20 minutes a day. That's it. And that small change causes their word exposure to just skyrocket to 1.8 million words a year. And where does that put them? The top 10%. The gap between these kids isn't just a gap, it's a canyon. When you see it like this, visually, that canyon becomes impossible to ignore. Just look at that tiny little bar for 8,000 words next to the absolute skyscraper representing 1.8 million. This is not a small difference in learning. It is a massive, life-altering gap in knowledge, in exposure, in opportunity, all from just 20 minutes a day. Let's just let that number sit there for a second. 1.8 million. That is how many more words a child is exposed to every single year just by having a consistent 20-minute reading habit. That, right there, is the reading advantage in black and white. In the end, this whole thing isn't really about just getting better grades. It's about physically building a stronger, faster, more capable brain. It's about unlocking a whole universe of ideas and vocabulary. It's really about giving a child the foundational tools they need to become their best possible self. And it all starts so simply, just one page at a time. So the real question isn't whether it's worth it, it's how can we afford not to find those 20 minutes?